We want to bring in our panel of the day for a reaction. We've got Jack Kingston, Trump 2020 campaign surrogate, former Republican, Georgia congressman, and former Trump campaign senior advisor. Also, Curtis Ellis, policy director with America First Policies and former senior policy advisor to President Trump. All right, we have two major decisions. As I said, one cleared the way for prosecutors in New York to see President Trump's financial records, which is a defeat for Trump, but a decision that probably means the records won't be seen by the public, of course, because of grand jury secrecy rules until after the election, perhaps indefinitely. But in the other decision, the court ruled that House Democrats could not, at least for now, see many of the same records. The president responded to that one, saying this: the Supreme Court sends a case back to lower court, arguments to continue. This is all a political prosecution. I won the Mueller witch hunt and others, and now I have to keep fighting in a politically corrupt New York. Not fair to this presidency or administration. Jack, we'll have you first weigh in on the Supreme Court's decisions.
Well, thank you, Emma. I agree with the president. I think he's framed it well. This is a political witch hunt. You know, in my involvement in the campaign in 2016, essentially no one ever asked about the president's tax returns. That was a media issue. It was a partisan, high-level Democrat issue. But the person on the street, Democrat, Republican, or independent, never asked about it. What they're concerned about is education, jobs, national security, the kind of things that the president has been trying to focus on. But as long as the Democrats can keep annoying him like, you know, flies biting an animal or something, that's what they're going to do. And it's really a sad day. They just can't let it go. The Democrat Party has been the party of investigation after investigation ever since November 2016.
Curtis, we know that you don't need to release your tax returns to become president. We've seen President Trump do that. But the fact that now the Supreme Court has ruled that the DA of New York should have access to it. What do you think about that?
So the Supreme Court has decided that the Democrats can't go on a fishing expedition in the president's financial records, but the Southern District of New York can go on a fishing expedition for the president's financial records. This is really ludicrous. If you look at what the Southern District of New York prosecutors are looking into, it's completely bogus. They are looking into whether the president, or before he was president, whether Donald J. Trump may have hidden payments to hush money to pay off paramours of his. Now, this is the same prosecutor that advanced the very spurious, discredited legal theory that paying somebody to be quiet about an affair you had is a campaign violation, campaign finance violation. They tried that with Edwards, and it didn't work then. And it's a very expansive view of the finance laws. So it's really clearly a political witch hunt, as the president has said, a fishing expedition. And it's very disturbing because what they're trying to do is, number one, persecute this president. And number two, send a signal to any businessman in the future, any independent person who has not made a career in government. Don't you dare try to play in our sandbox and run for office, because we will hound you and expose you and destroy you every way we can. The government does not want outsiders playing in politics. That is for the politicians only.
It's an interesting precedent that could be set based on this decision. Jack, you had mentioned when you talked to voters in 2016 that they didn't care about the president's tax returns, but say the DA finds some sort of hush money payments. Do you think that could potentially impact voters?
I don't think it will. You know, it's like all these kiss and tell books that come out. If you hate the president, you grab the books right off the shelf, you read them, and you love it. But it doesn't move the needle from his base. His base is not focused on his tax returns. They are far more concerned about the big picture issues like national security and the economy and fighting coronavirus. It's such a sad and a sick procedure that the Democrats are doing, that we are the party of the trial lawyers and we're going to find a way to get you and keep it an insider game. So I don't think it's going to hurt the president regardless of what they come out with. And I'm sure, working with the New York Times, they're going to come up with something that they're going to leak out, whether it's in front of the grand jury or not, and there will be some big dust-up about it in liberal world. and that'll probably be late September or October, but it's not going to change. It's not really going to move the needle beyond their own partisanship.
Yes, we know the New York Times somehow has access to those documents, those leaks that apparently keep happening. This time it's only pinned back to one guy, the Manhattan DA, so I guess that could be the only source in this case right now. Jack and Curtis, stick around. We've got a lot more to cover during today's show, so stay with us.
We welcome Chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, James Dickey, to weigh in. We also have our panel, Jack Kingston, as well as Curtis Ellis. Guys, thanks so much. I wanted to talk about this. I'm glad you're all here. James, I'll get to this. I know I saw on your Twitter, I know you're doing some pushback on this. I believe you're looking into legal options against the city. Do you have any update for me?
Well, we absolutely are looking very strongly into this because Mayor Turner made it very clear. His intention was to interrupt the convention process and disenfranchise Republican voters from around the state. You know, he is keeping up a horrible, terrible Southern Democrat tradition of disenfranchising voters, keeping voters away from their voting locations. This is not a party that we do in our convention. This is critical election activity, including literally electing the presidential electors who will cast Texas's 38 electoral college votes for President Donald J. Trump in January. That is what he's interfering with, willfully, knowingly, and totally out of any equality of standard to what he's done with anyone else of any other political persuasion since he's been mayor.
Definitely putting himself in the way of this to block it in any way he can. So what's next for the convention, James? Is it going to be virtual?
Well, virtual.
All right, I think we froze up there.
Republicans, we actually want the input of our grassroots. We actually want everyday citizens to be part of the debate and decide our future and our policies and our way forward. And virtual just does not make that as easy. So our state Republican Executive Committee just last week affirmed our strong desire to move forward in person. We are looking at every available option to make sure that we can do that. If we cannot, then we are ready to go virtual if that becomes absolutely necessary as a last resort.
Jack, it doesn't stop there. Move across the country to Florida here. Attorneys in Jacksonville, Florida, recently filing a lawsuit against the city in an attempt to block the Republican National Convention from happening there. What are your thoughts on that, Jack? Is this political? Is this about the virus? Your thoughts?
Well, I think, of course, it is political. These are the same mayors who did not say one single word when it came time to protesters who were destroying property in many cases and never practicing social distancing, and sometimes wearing masks and sometimes not wearing masks. So this is kind of a behavior. It's a pattern that we're seeing. It's just part of the election world. I'd say to Chairman Dickey, though, I kind of think he's doing us a favor because it's just showing how desperate they are and how they're willing to have a double standard and squelch freedom of assembly, which is our First Amendment. So, I think as a Republican, as a father, as a neighbor, as a good son and brother, yes, I want to practice social distancing and wash my hands and wear a mask when needed. But that's my decision. I don't need nanny state mayors to tell me what to do and when to do it.
Curtis Ellis, your thoughts?
Exactly. Well, and as you said, there is a silver lining here. The public is being awakened to how we cannot cede urban areas, city council, school boards, mayor positions. We can no longer cede those to the Democrats. We started aggressively getting involved in that at the Republican Party of Texas 2 years ago. We actually do have two great Republicans on the Houston City Council. This makes it crystal clear we need a lot more, and we are aggressively going after that this November.
I'm out of time. I got to run. So, Curtis, I'll get your thoughts later. So stick around. Jack and Curtis, stay with me. James Dickey, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. If there are any updates on your story there, let me know, okay?
We will, absolutely.
Thank you.
Bringing in our panel of the day, Jack Kingston, Curtis Ellis, and they've got thoughts as well. But, of course, this has become political. going to school, sending children to school has become political. I want to show you this tweet from President Trump yesterday saying that I disagree with the CDC on their very tough and expensive guidelines for opening schools. While they want them open, they're asking schools to do very impractical things. I will be meeting with them. This, of course, drove the questions during yesterday's press briefing. Jack, I'll start with you here. Why does there seem to be such disconnect between the CDC and their guidelines and potentially what the president expects for schools in the fall?
You know, if you look at the CDC, because we're with a new virus, dealing with it in real time, they have made decisions that haven't always been consistent with, they always change paths a few weeks later. So I think the president's right to challenge them. But the other thing is, this is an unknown territory. Sweden, the Netherlands, Finland, a number of countries that are hardly, radical conservative countries, they have kept their schools open. So there is a model out there that we can practice. It's not surprising that the NEA, the National Education Association, comes out against whatever Trump has said, because they are a Democrat organization that gives 90% of its money to Democrats and has opposed this president all along. A statistic that people don't want to talk about, and it's a tough statistic, but the number of deaths for children under age 15 on coronavirus is 29. 29 deaths nationally for people under 15. That's too high. It's all sad. But if you look at the fear-mongering that's going on, the statistics don't back it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are also so many other benefits, too. I mean, for unfortunate situations where it's an unsafe home, children who could potentially be abused at home, they rely on those teachers to notify authorities about what's going on at the home. And that's, of course, not happening when you're getting your education at home. Not to mention, of course, being in a classroom with fellow students. You've got that social interaction with one another. Curtis, it'll be interesting to see the decisions governors made. As we've seen throughout the whole pandemic, these governors have had more responsibilities than probably they ever imagined when they were running their campaigns.
Yes, and in many cases, they bungled it. They've let politics get in the way of good public policy. It's very unfortunate that children are being held hostage to the Democratic Party's desire to defeat President Trump at any cost. The CDC guidelines need to be revised. As Jack pointed out, we have European countries that had their schools open. We had daycare centers operating throughout the pandemic for the children of essential workers, and we did not see any spread of disease in these daycare centers or from these daycare centers. So we have hard data that shows we can reopen the schools. The danger is we're going to scar this generation for life. If we don't reopen the schools, these kids are going to fall behind in their education. They're going to be taught to be afraid of everything, and it's going to have lasting effects on our country, and not good effects. These kids are going to be marred, and we can't let that happen. We can't let the Teachers Union, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Democratic National Committee, fail to do their job. We saw grocery workers do their job. We saw healthcare workers do their job. We saw truck drivers do their jobs. Teachers can do their jobs. And I have confidence that most of them want to. And for those who are too old, maybe they should take early retirement. There are plenty of people that would be happy to take those jobs and teach our children, because it needs to happen. And teachers love children, and they love doing their job.
Yeah, so we need those history lessons. For sure, as we've seen the response of people not knowing their history and how that's all played out. Sandra, as a former teacher, again, your advice to governors who are debating whether or not to reopen.
I think you have to realize that it's much safer than you're imagining. You don't have to do all of these crazy things to make it safe. The children are not going to be the COVID ones that we have to be concerned about. And the older teachers have to come back. Children's lives are at risk. The family life is at risk. Parents are not qualified to teach children. Teachers are doing this teaching because they love it. They love children. They love the subjects they teach. They're brilliant at it. There's no better place for children than in school. And we need to get them all back. We're talking about 55 million kids who are at home, lonely, sick and tired of it. Their parents are distressed.
Yeah, it's so many. It's so many. They miss that routine. I hate to cut you off, but we're out of time. And Sandra Lee, thank you for coming on and sharing your thoughts as a former school teacher and political analyst. Thank you. All right, Jack and Curtis, stick around. A lot more to talk about after this. We're going to react to the report of that incoming student at Marquette University who was being blocked over pro-Trump posts, that video that was shared thousands of times, and now she's receiving phone calls saying that her admission is under review. Curtis, your thoughts on hearing that? Again, she'd apparently paid for tuition already, and now she might not be going to the school.
Yeah, we're seeing a very, very, very dangerous pattern here. Whether it's people being canceled from Twitter, deplatformed from Facebook, now we have major corporations and civil rights organizations pressuring Facebook to cancel more people under the rubric of hate crime. We see the Contra Costa County, California prosecutor prosecuting someone for a civil rights violation for basically vandalizing a mural, painting over the Black Lives Matter mural there. They're calling that civil rights. We're seeing James Bennett, the editor of the New York Times, basically forced to resign and disgrace himself because he had a dissenting view. Anybody that has a dissenting view, dissenting, of course, in the direction of supporting Donald Trump, coincidentally, are being pushed from the public sphere. We don't have a silent majority anymore. We have a silenced majority. This is very dangerous for free speech. And now we've even seen Harvard University professors calling for the firing of another professor for having dissenting views. We are in very dangerous territory here. The younger generation and too many of the older generation have forgotten the founding principles of America: free speech, free thought, and freedom of assembly, which you don't have in Houston either if you're a Republican.
All right. So you've covered all the bases. Clearly, cancel culture is alive and well right now, and it doesn't stop with who's going to be canceled. If you have any sort of differing opinion here, and clearly that was the case of this student. In fact, she wouldn't be the only one potentially with that opinion. She was just one to make it public and to post about it. And when you've got these videos being shared thousands of times, clearly that's not an image that the school is okay with having. I mean, Jack, what does it say about our universities when a university like Marquette University has trouble with a student expressing their political views?
You know, Curtis is heartbreakingly right on all the points that he has made on it. I am the son of a college professor, brother of one, and at our kitchen table, we were expected to have civil discourse. My sister is a diehard liberal, for example. We have atheists, we have active Christians in my family, and we're always taught to foster the good right to discuss these things without calling names. Universities are where this stuff should be nurtured. You need to cultivate relationships with people who come from different backgrounds and different points of view. But diversity on a college campus today is defined by race and skin color. There's absolutely no true diversity when it comes to thought. They want a uniform thought process. They want a certain stereotype of person, and it's a huge disservice for our young people. And I frankly think one of the why we're seeing this irresponsible, irrational destruction of monuments is because these are young people who've been brought up through this kind of campus culture.
They're just not having these conversations, as you say, as you talk about, because you aren't even having the chance to have them in the first place. Guys, we're out of time, but that's Jack Kingston and Curtis Ellis. Thank you both for coming on today's program and being our panel. We appreciate it. Thanks. All right, and you at home, stay with us. We'll be right back.